Roblox isn't really known for being scary. Well, let's chuck FNAF in there, and we have by far the most unique and terrifying experiences known to mankind. In this video, I have multiple Roblox FNAF games lined up, and let's see if we can beat them all. The first game for today's video is called Five Nights at Marcus Remastered. We have some day shifts at the Marcus Robotics factory, and in this factory houses a few animatronics. These animatronics are Marcus and his friends, and they essentially want to kill us. So we start this game and immediately I am very confused. I thought I just had to stay alive, but this game really works like FNAF 6 or Pizzeria Simulator, where you have to complete tasks, and these tasks are basically how the nights progress. It took me around 10 minutes to find that there is a task monitor. You have to move the mouse up to bring down the monitor, and for some reason you have to be facing the door for this, so this took me a while to figure out, but eventually we learned how to beat the nights. The first night we have one animatronic threat, and this is Marcus himself. How Marcus works is he will start in the loading bay and he will go to the top of the cameras where we're in like a office section. After this, Marcus will go straight outside your office. If Marcus then disappears, he's going to be outside your office, but you cannot see him. So the only way to get rid of him is by using the electric shock, which will get rid of him. And the shocks themselves are completely insane. My eyes were completely destroyed by the end of this game, but nonetheless, night one went by pretty smoothly. I went to the task monitor. In the earlier nights, I went to around 50%, and then I obviously got off the monitor to check cameras. But as the nights progress, I would really start to use less of the monitor. But for now, we would die a few times because I was obviously new to the game, but eventually we would get through night one and enter our second shift. This shift, we introduce ourselves to a new animatronic, and we're gonna call this guy Tallman. And how Tallman works is he will go through two camera phases. The first is he will be in the top camera where Marcus is, and after this he will be straight outside our office door. The third and final phase for Tallman is you will actually see him outside your office, and if he is there, you have to go to the task monitor and shock him. So kind of like Marcus, but a little bit different because this time we can actually see where the animatronic is. And a pretty simple animatronic, but nonetheless, finding out how this thing worked was pretty terrifying because I had no idea he would pop up right outside my office. So seeing him there actually startled me a little bit. This night went by essentially like night one. I got through my task by getting around 25 to 30% done each go. Then by checking my monitors and making sure Marcus and Tallman weren't getting too close to my office, we would get through night two pretty easily. Heading into shift 3, we have a new animatronic to say hello to. And I'm actually deciding this animatronic's name. We're gonna call it Vent. Yep, the word Vent. So how Vent works is basically there's two phases. One, Vent will go straight on top of you and you will see her like looking down. If you see this, you have to flash the flashlight multiple times and this will scare her off. The second phase is she will go through the first vent, make her way outside your office, and you will see her dangling from the office window. And if you see this, you're gonna have to use the task monitor and use the vent shock. The way to make Vent pretty easy to counter is you'll actually hear a vent audio when she goes inside of the vent. So if you hear two of these, she's either going to be outside your office or on top of you when you're looking at the cameras. So either way, it was pretty important that we kept an eye on this animatronic, as she can kill you pretty fast if you're not paying attention. With the mix of three animatronics, the nights got a little bit harder because I now had to resort to using around 15% on my task, and this was pretty difficult as the nights now took extremely longer as I was paying more attention to the animatronics. Something I found is that if I didn't see the animatronics in their cameras, I would just use a office shock, as at that point either Tallman's gonna be at my office or Marcus will be in my office but I can't see him. So with that, eventually we would get through night 3 and we would begin night 4. Night 4 introduces us to the last animatronic, and we're gonna call this guy Big Marcus. I don't really think I need to explain myself here, so let's get into it. Big Marcus is by far the easiest animatronic to deal with. The first phase of Big Marcus is he will be in a closed off section of the map, and the second phase he will be outside your office ready to jump scare you. So this one was definitely the easiest animatronic to deal with. And the second animatronic is one that I forgot to mention, but how this one works is on your cameras you will see a big eye. When you see this purple eye, you're going to need to click on the monitor, whichever one it's on, and this will get rid of it. So again, pretty easy to deal with, but nonetheless, now we have every single animatronic in the game. Night 4 was pretty difficult and posed a really large threat, but eventually I would get used to every single animatronic and their moveset. Learning this, I would easily be able to go through my task, making sure I did a little bit here, little bit there, and also check the animatronics when I could. Everything combined, eventually Night 4 would be beaten, but now we would have to beat Night 5. Night 5 is essentially the exact same thing. This time, however, the animatronics are a lot more aggressive. So to combat this aggressiveness, we would have to really use the task monitor sparingly and making sure that the cameras were checked once every so often, just so we know where the animatronics are. This game mainly relies on the cameras and how you use them, so essentially like classic FNAF, which I really enjoyed the homage to the OG FNAF style of gameplay. Checking my cameras and making sure my tasks were going by pretty smoothly, this night would eventually also be beaten. As I completed my final task, well, this cutscene ensued. This cutscene, I assume, is us being captured by Big Marcus, and I assume this will lead us straight into Five Nights at Marcus's 2. But that is a story for another day. This next game is the one and only Five Nights at Freddy's Doom, and that title alone is already making me terrified. But this is essentially a free roam FNAF game. But there is one thing this game has that no other FNAF game really has, that is, it has Doom. Like, this is FNAF Doom we're talking about, so let's get into it. For this game, I was accompanied by some mates of mine, and we had an absolute blast playing FNAF Doom. Running around the pizzeria, getting chased by every single animatronic was the most rewarding yet terrifying Roblox FNAF experience I've ever had. Like, top tier gameplay here, guys. Top tier. So the way to get through FNAF 2, and by the way, we went straight into the Golden Freddy mode, so this was the hardest challenge in the game. To do this night, you have to survive till 6 AM. During this time, every single animatronic in the building will chase you down. Your job is to keep the music box wound up and to keep control of the running animatronics. Fortunately, you run faster than these animatronics, so as long as you keep running forward, you shouldn't die. That is until you get cornered by, I don't know, Mangle sitting in the vents. So this definitely posed a challenge. We found early on that if we waited until Balloon Boy went to us, we could shave off around an hour of each night. I volunteered to go next to the stage where all the animatronics were, and when Balloon Boy found me, it was absolutely terrifying. I got absolutely crunched in those vents. With that, eventually, I would have a pretty successful run. I was pretty much doomed from the start. Every single animatronic chased me down, but if you know anything about COD zombies, you know how to train. So pretending these animatronics were Call of Duty zombies, I would train them across the whole pizzeria. How I would do this loop is I would go from the office all the way through the hallway and end up in the main stage. Here is where I would have wound the music box, and by doing around 2 ticks, I would do the strat again and again to get to 5 AM. With around 10 seconds to go, I officially got FNAF doomed, and it was pretty heartbreaking. There was one run where I died. However, my mate somehow managed to clutch up the night and beat FNAF Doom. His heroics were truly remarkable. It was inspiring to see one FNAF player successfully defeat FNAF Doom. Next was FNAF Doom 3, or the third FNAF game. This one is like FNAF 2, but the difference is Springtrap is the only animatronic that can kill you. However, the pizzeria is a lot more condensed, and also there's God of War music. So that's cool. This one was truly terrifying. The way the phantoms can kind of trap you and the inevitable doom of Springtrap chasing you through the vents, it was absolutely terrifying. Like, we were actually doomed in this one. By using some teamwork, we found that by luring Springtrap to different audios across the pizzeria, we could actually stall Springtrap. And by using this strat, eventually we would make it to 4 AM, where the pizzeria would start to burn down. With an epic escape, we found ourselves on the rooftop of FNAF 3. And here is where Springtrap decides to just jump us for no reason. This was it. Us versus Springtrap, the most epic fight in FNAF Doom history. By using a crowbar, we would eventually start hitting Springtrap, and he started to grow very tired. However, eventually I would be killed by William Afton, and my mate would be the last one standing. He would also succumb to the same death. We failed to kill Springtrap. Our next attempt, everyone but me died, and I was going pretty well, and eventually I hit 4 AM. So I knew that the Springtrap boss fight was to come. I made my way to the rooftop, and again, I would fight Springtrap on top of the FNAF 3 pizzeria. By trading blows and continuously fighting, eventually I would kick Springtrap off the side of the pizzeria rooftop, which led to William Afton's demise. We then see the place start to burn down, and during this cutscene, a certain someone appears to be still alive, and this concludes the most epic FNAF Doom experience of all time. We would then try the other FNAF Doom game modes, and the other two, which were FNAF 1 and FNAF 4, were pretty much impossible. For FNAF 1, it was pretty much just kind of like FNAF 2, but the difference being that there's only 4 animatronics, and Foxy for some reason is like Super Saiyan, meaning that he can kind of just go from one side of the pizzeria to the other. And Freddy, which I didn't really know how he worked, he kind of just laughed and moved across the pizzeria, not really doing much. And lastly, Chica and Bonnie. These two just kind of follow you across the pizzeria, and they will jump scare you if they get too close. I'm gonna be honest with this one, I couldn't really be bothered beating it. We'd already beaten the other 2 FNAF Doom game modes, and I'll be honest, I think I've had enough FNAF Doom for one video. But anyways, I would move on to FNAF 4, which was by far the hardest in the whole game. With FNAF 4, there's Nightmare, and Nightmare is faster than you. He's faster than the player. So what does this mean? Well, this means that if you get caught by Nightmare, you're dead. There's no escaping him, you're just pretty much gone. There's also another house in the FNAF 4 game mode. However, in this house, there's literally only one animatronic, which is Plushtrap, and how he works is if you stare at him, he will not move, and if you don't stare at him, he will jump scare you. Kind of like Weeping Angels, pretty much. This one was impossible, as mentioned before, how Nightmare is faster than the player, but something I thought that was pretty interesting is throughout the whole house, there seems to be some sort of like amalgamation starting to form with teeth coming from the walls, which I found pretty interesting. However, they didn't really add much to the gameplay, and overall, I think FNAF 4 is definitely the weakest out of all the FNAF Doom games. Overall, FNAF Doom was very fun. After playing it, I feel like a new man, so I would definitely recommend you play Roblox FNAF Doom. This next game is Five Nights at Armandeep. So this game is actually called Five Nights at Friends, and well, our friend Armandeep here is the main antagonist, which is to be a very fun FNAF experience. How Five Nights at Friends works is you can pretty much change the animatronics to your friends in Roblox. So I chose a bunch of people that I know. The game is pretty much exactly like FNAF 1, so I mean, mechanics, I think you probably know, but there's 2 lights and there's 2 doors either side of you. If you press the door, it shuts, and if you press the light, you can stare at the animatronic. Look, you already know how this stuff works. The main thing about this game is how absolutely ridiculous the animatronics look. I mean, look at this. There's a villager in the hallway. I don't think I have to explain much more. The game as well was pretty like glitchy. I noticed at many times, if a character was too small, you couldn't actually see them from the hallway. So pretty much, if you had a small Roblox character, you're pretty much just gone. I mean, being jump scared by a villager from Minecraft had to have been the absolute highest peak of FNAF I've ever seen. Something I noticed about FNAF 1 is the power usage is really low. And what I mean by this is by shutting doors, the power goes by very slow, which I think has something to do with this game having longer nights, but this kind of made the game pretty easy. So eventually we would get through FNAF 1 and move on to FNAF 2, which is pretty much the exact same thing. Again, we have a bunch of animatronics, and in this case we chose to have 3 Minecraft villagers because I mean 3 is better than 1, but now we had to really kind of pay attention because this game was pretty easy, like the first one. So yeah. FNAF 2 was easy in that the gameplay itself was pretty much identical to FNAF 2. However, something about this game that is super hard to do is figuring out if Foxy is in the hallway. Why would this be a problem, you might ask? Well, the animatronics you choose actually block each other in the hallway. So if you can imagine, having Foxy being a very small animatronic and him being at the back is pretty much just an instant death. I tried spamming the flashlight down the hallway. However, the actual battery itself is literally just non-existent. It goes by too fast. So sparingly using the flashlight, I tried my best to see where Foxy was, but it simply was way too hard. Saying that the game was easy, at the same time it was extremely hard to beat, and I ended up giving up. I feel like I could have beaten this game, but it's pretty much FNAF 2, and honestly the coolest part was having your friends as the animatronics. But still, this FNAF Roblox game is absolutely fantastic, even though FNAF 2 might be just a little bit broken. So this next game is called Forgotten Memories. It's a little different to the other FNAF games. First of all, it has a cast, so we can now actually have dialogue in our FNAF game, which, I mean, awesome. The game starts off and we seem to be a night crew that want to make money on the side. So we find a Fazbear Entertainment that I guess was nearby, and we work the night shift. Here we have a few things to keep track of. First of all, our power and our oxygen. If any of these two key essential things go too low, then we're going to die. The game itself is a free roam, so it's terrifying. In this game, we have 6 animatronics. We have Golden Freddy, we then have Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and also the puppet making a return in this game. By far, the simplest animatronic to deal with is the puppet. The puppet will be in its corner, and how it works is it will go through different stages. If you see it outside of its box, you need to close the curtains. If you don't do this, then the puppet will chase you across the pizzeria until you are jump scared. So that is by far the easiest of the animatronics. The other ones pretty much chase you until you either find a hiding spot or you close the door on them. The hiding spots are pretty hard to find. However, if you do find one, you're in great luck, as just by going inside of one, you get rid of any animatronic currently chasing you. So going back to before, how I mentioned that there was a power and oxygen meter, if these deplete fully, you're going to need to reset them. The power meter, you have to go to the industrial area of the pizzeria, and once you are here, you are going to need to restart 2 generators. This area is home to Bonnie, which I will get into later, but on the first night going here, it was pretty easy to just restart the generators and continue the night. I forgot to mention that if these power generators go off, the night will freeze, so you will be stuck until you either reset the generator or you get jump scared. And next, the oxygen meter. You have to go to the arcade, which is on the complete other side of the power room, which I found pretty fun. And to do this, you have to simply just flip a switch and the oxygen will be brought back to the pizzeria. If you don't do this, then, well, you're gonna suffocate. Just put it simply. The first night I was by myself and the game itself was pretty simple. Getting around Freddy was pretty difficult as he likes to go near the arcade. So as you can imagine, if Freddy is walking around the arcade and you have to reset the power switch, you're pretty much screwed. So carefully running across the pizzeria at full force, we would eventually be able to reset the oxygen meter, which meant I could survive. And I also made my way to the industrial area to reset the power generators. This brought power back to the pizzeria and meant I could beat the night. Moving on to the second night, I would now be joined by 3 teammates and we would now tackle the challenge, which is night 2, which is hard. You now have Bonnie, which makes the game 10 times harder as he will now roam the industrial area, pretty much meaning that you kind of can't go from one side to the other because you're probably gonna get chased. And with a stamina bar that goes down pretty quickly, you either have to find a hiding spot or you're gonna get jump scared. So the first few tries, me and my mates were just being absolute goofballs. We had a few close encounters, which I will play now.
Die, then we don't have anyone.
Oh my god! Go back! Go back! Go back! Oh! Oh! Oh my god! Wait, he's inside. He's inside the office. Things were going pretty bad. I'm gonna be honest, pretty bad. But we had a game plan that I kind of, pioneered. Being the intellectual FNAF player that I am, I decided, hey, how about we get players going to the arcade and the industrial area, and when the generators go off, we can reset them. This worked pretty well and actually allowed us to go closer and closer to that 6 a.m. mark, because the way we were dying is mainly due to a lack of oxygen. So by me being sent to the arcade, I could then just reset the oxygen if it ever went too low. Freddy often drift very close to me, so I had to hide in the arcade itself, which was actually pretty terrifying, but nonetheless, eventually using this strat, we could eventually beat night 2 and move on to night 3. Yes! Yes! So for night 3, we have a new animatronic to deal with. This is of course Foxy. How Foxy works is he will remain in his pirate cove until he eventually leaves it. When Foxy leaves, he will start to roam the pizzeria, eventually making his way toward your office. If this does happen, there's 2 ways to deal with him. The first way is to keep your flashlight on him, and this will stun him. However, the problem is this will still make him go toward you, however at a slower pace. The other way you can deal with Foxy is by closing both doors. This will drain a lot of power, however it will completely get rid of Foxy as a threat. To beat night 3, we kept to the same strat. We would have 2 players split up, and one would go toward the arcade, which was me, and the other player going toward the industrial area. The remaining 2 players will stay in the office, keeping track of 2 things. Firstly, the puppet, and secondly, the cameras, including where everything is. So keeping through this strat, this next night was pretty simple. Foxy was a little bit hard to deal with, as this was our first time dealing with him, but we eventually learned that the flashlight does make him stunned, so this was pretty useful. And overall, night 3 went by pretty smoothly. Freddy ended up going in the same room as me, but by kind of maneuvering my way around him and hiding in the corner of the room, I just managed to barely escape him. We would eventually get through night 3 and move into night 4. This next night has Chica, who is a little similar to Freddy, how she works. She will remain in the industrial area, looping around the generators. The way to deal with Chica is to simply not go near her. If you do, you're essentially dead, as this area of the map has no hiding spots. The problem is, when she does her loops around the industrial area, you have to stick right behind her, as she will go from room to room. So if you want to get to both generators, you're going to need to slowly go behind her. And then when she makes a move to a different room, you can then go straight to the generator. Dealing with all 4 animatronics was quite hard. By using teamwork and communicating with one another on what we needed to do, we got through majority of this night unharmed. Foxy's move patterns were pretty hard to deal with, and most times he would end up jump scaring the people in the office. And near the end of the night, our player that was in the industrial room died, and this left the generators open, and this was really close, because if the generators ran out of power, this would cause the whole night to freeze, so it was literally down to the wire. The night would end just before the generator ran out, which was literally perfect timing. And we would now move on to the final night, which was night 5. This night begins, and immediately something seems off. The night pop-up text was completely different, and not only this, but in the night, the phone call was pretty alarming. So the owner of Tony's Tacos had pretty much had this whole place as a cover-up. The brand pretty much relocated and made a new location completely different to the old one, and this was to cover up the brand's reputation. At this point, the whole thing was pretty much destroyed. Also, the animatronics are being controlled by a unknown person, and it seems during this final phone call, the animatronics were sent to destroy the last remaining worker. Our job now was to survive and bring this news to the police. However, this night posed the biggest threat so far. For this final night, we have the final animatronic, which is Golden Freddy. During the previous nights, Golden Freddy would show up, however, only when the power ran out. The only way to die to Golden Freddy is if you stare at him for too long. Beside that, there's not really a way to die from him, but in this new night, he can now appear whenever, so you have to be always on a lookout. For this night, we stuck to the exact same strat we've been doing for this entire game. However, albeit a lot harder, as the animatronic spawn spawn rates were a lot faster, and we found very early on that they were very aggressive. The thing was so bad that we couldn't even get to the arcade before Freddy being in the game. So I would literally have to have one of my teammates lure Freddy out for me to actually get inside the arcade. So yeah, these things were pretty aggressive. This night literally came down to the wire. We all pretty much had one life left, and at this point we just had to survive for 30 more seconds. With the power draining and with nearly every single person in the office dead, we just had to rely on RNG to beat the game. By keeping the generator on, we narrowly avoided another power outage, and we would be able to beat the night. With that, a cutscene would play, and it would show us and the crew being chased down by Golden Freddy. We would make it to the exit, however, with the thing being boarded off, we had no way to escape. And the game ends with Golden Freddy attacking us. It's safe to say that no one made it out alive. Overall, Forgotten Memories was an absolute blast to play. So with that, let's move into our next FNAF game. So this next FNAF game is called FNAF Time in the Past. The game takes place in the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and we, the night guard, have been assigned to work at this pizzeria and perform tasks during the night. Immediately, something that stuck out to me was just how dark and just gritty this game looked. For a Roblox game, the graphics themselves are absolutely amazing. So yeah, huge props to these developers because the game itself looks really good. I was joined with one of my mates and we were pretty confused on what to actually do. After a while, we would get accustomed to the pizzeria, you know, getting the layout of the pizzeria down and all that stuff. And eventually we got to the office and now we had a phone call to listen to. The first task was to remove all the graffiti from the pizzeria. The place itself was absolutely just trashed. There was graffiti all over the walls and it was time that we actually cleaned it. However, a certain Freddy Fazbear wanted to join us and, well, kind of wanted us dead. During the night, we heard a Freddy laugh and this signified that Freddy has awakened, and by this point, we had to now do our task whilst being chased by Freddy Fazbear. So going to the part and service, we would grab the cleaning supplies. After that, it was time to clean up all the graffiti, which were placed in random locations throughout the pizzeria. Often during the night, Freddy would see us and this would initiate a chase. How these chases work is you need to make your way back to the office and close both doors. Being pretty fresh to this game, we didn't know that we needed to close both doors. So what we did is we would close one door and then Freddy would simply go to the other door and continue this pattern until we, were dead. But after dying a few times, we realized, hey, we need to close both of these doors. The cameras themselves were pretty useless. I mean, tell me if you can see anything on this camera because I can't. So we just pretty much got through the task that we had to do, going around the pizzeria, finding graffiti, getting rid of it, stuff like that. And then after doing all that work, we had to now survive to 6 AM. So how we did this is we went back to the office and we remained there for the remainder of the night. If Freddy lurked too close, we would simply just close the door and all was pretty well. We got through the night and we now had to go into night 2, which was a lot harder. We now had 2 animatronics. We have Freddy from the night before and we have Bonnie, who is not only faster than Freddy, but is also a lot more aggressive. This night we had a few tasks to do. First of all, we had to go around the pizzeria and take off the posters that are on the walls. And after completing all 7 posters, we now had to clean up all the trash, which was spread across the pizzeria. However, a pretty big problem arose, and that was we couldn't actually see where the items or the objective was. So we had to find the objective out. And this was pretty bad because everywhere we went, it seemed that Freddy or Bonnie was there waiting for us. So we would be simply just walking around looking for items and, well, we'd see Bonnie chase us down at Mach 2. So not a good start to this night, and this took a while to kind of get through. Bonnie is also pretty stubborn as he will often go close to your office, meaning that if you want to get to one side of the pizzeria, more than likely you have to go through Bonnie, which will probably initiate a chase. So saying all this stuff, how did we get through this night? Well, it took a while, and also my friend would leave being pretty frustrated with the game, so it was now up to me to finish off this night. I forgot to mention that you actually get 3 lives per night. However, this game is really designed for multiplayer, so for one player you really have to get through stuff very quickly. So how did I get through night 2? Well, first of all, a massive help was actually remembering where the posters or the objective was before even entering the night. This meant I could smash through the objective before the animatronics even awoke, which was a massive advantage. Also, I found all the objective locations, and for some reason on one of my playthroughs, the indicator for the objective started to work. It kind of like worked and didn't work. I was pretty confused why this was the case, and I still don't have an answer for it, so you're gonna have to go with that. By carefully avoiding Bonnie and Freddy's detection, we eventually made it through this objective. For the remainder of the night, I camped at the front of the entrance, which meant that no animatronic could really reach me, unless if Freddy went too close, which at that point I would just hide in the corner, making sure that he didn't actually find me. All in all, eventually we got through night 2, and this would get us to night 3, which also was pretty difficult. Night 3 has a few positives. For one, the vent system, which was kind of teased at before during the opening of the night, we can now actually enter this vent system, and this leads only to the dining room. I would have liked if the vent system reached other parts of the pizzeria, but I guess this is all we're gonna get. Another thing is that now we have 3 animatronics, and the new animatronic being Chica. She will pretty much camp the kitchen and the dining room, pretty much making it so you can't enter this room at all. To start this night off, we had to find all the plushies. These plushies are in pretty obvious locations. 2 are in your office, so I mean, great start. Once you have the plushie, you have to make your way to the prize counter in the arcade room, and after doing this, you have to put the plushie on the shelf. So after repeating this 6 times, we would be able to move on to the next objective, which was by far the worst thing I have ever done. This objective on paper is pretty simple. You have to go to the Pirate Cove and take 5 chairs and bring them out to the front. However, there's a very big issue. The position of Pirate Cove is right in the center, but not only Bonnie and Freddy's move areas, but also Chica's. Chica will basically be able to get you from the entrance point. However, she can't go any further than that. The other 2 animatronics, however, can get you on the hallway, and if you're holding a chair and you are trying to run out, let's just say you're pretty much screwed. And trying to do this by myself was literally just impossible. I would usually get to around 2 to 3 chairs done, but after that it just didn't seem like I could grab every single chair and do this 5 times in a row. Most times the only way I could even try and do this was to literally loop Freddy around the chairs and then make a quick dart out to the front. And this could all be sabotaged if Bonnie just happened to be at the entrance point, which happened most times. I even tried getting my mates to help me, but even then I couldn't get this done. So after hours of attempts, I had the genius idea to just get through the night without doing the objective. The reason why I wasn't doing this to begin with is, first of all, I felt that it was kind of cheating, and secondly, if you do this method, what's going to happen is when you die, you have to restart from the night you last completed every single objective on, essentially making it you cannot die. But after some time, I grew pretty frustrated, so I opted to just sit in the vent the whole night. This got me through the night. However, we had to now beat night 4, which was not as hard, but still posed the same issue. Night 4 has 2 objectives like night 3. You are firstly going to need to grab the toolbox from the parts and service room. After this, you need to make your way to Pirate Cove, and also now we have to say hello to Foxy, who works like the marionette. You just simply need to keep his box wound. If you let this go too low, I'm not sure what actually happens because I've never done it before, but I'm assuming Foxy will run out of his cove and jump scare you. With the toolbox at our disposal, we need to repair 2 arcade cabinets. One is found in Pirate Cove and the other in the dining room. To repair them, I mean, look, it's pretty simple. Just select the left color and link it to the right color. Super simple. However, after this, we have to do another objective, which we need to grab 3 boxes from the dining room and take them to the front. However, there's a massive risk, and this is once you grab the box, you cannot run. And with all 4 animatronics out, honestly, It's pretty much impossible to get this box to the front without bumping into an animatronic. And even with 4 players, this still poses a massive issue, and honestly, I just gave up. I couldn't do this without bumping into an animatronic, so I've opted to sit in the vent for the whole night. This was pretty risky because night 5 I didn't know how to beat it, and not only that, if I died in night 5 it would take me back to night 3, the last night I actually was on. I went with it. I took the risk and went to night 5, but thankfully this risk paid off because after beating all 4 normal nights, night 5 unlocks permanently. Night 5 is by far the most unique night in that it literally doesn't take place in the pizzeria. For night 5 you start off like every other night. However, the phone call you pick up is pretty alarming. It tells you to face the consequences. So by going to the parts and service room, you find a golden Freddy suit that has been stuffed. After staring at the stuffed suit, you get transported into a forest area. The game also has some cutscenes of William Afton, which I found pretty sick. But anyways, this next section is a pretty lengthy section. Our goal is to make our way to the bathroom, which is located on the other side of the forest. Getting there took a little bit as this whole forest is pretty massive in itself. Eventually, when we got there, we would then get straight into a chase, which took me off guard. I was not expecting this, but anyways, we got to the bathroom and locked the door behind us. The creature then started banging and howling at the door, and immediately it took me just by surprise. I was not expecting this whole ordeal. Anyways, after attempting to break the door, the creature then makes his way behind the bathroom, and then we get to see the thing, and it seems to be a mixture of Spring Bonnie and a animal, so pretty awesome stuff. Our new objective was to now find a ladder, a music box, and also a jerry can. These 3 items have been scattered around the forest, and our job now is to find the items and bring them back to the bathroom. So we got a map, however it's not really the best map. It doesn't really tell you much. I was actually lost for the first 5 minutes. I didn't really know where to go, but eventually I found the music box, and this got me a little bit of confidence that I wouldn't die. Although I'm lost in the forest, the main issue is the entity, or Spring Bonnie, does actually hunt us down, so it was pretty important that I got these items pretty quickly. After finding the music box, I made my way back near the car, and I went to the right, and this took me to a underground bunker. I was pretty confused why a bunker would be in this forest, but nonetheless, inside we get a really nice whiteboard of William Afton's early sketch designs for the animatronics. I found this pretty odd, but then again, we are hallucinating, so perhaps it does make sense. More importantly, we found the jerry can, and after exiting the bunker, we would make our way back to the bathroom. But doing so, we bumped straight into the bunny, and now we had to run for our lives. The game tells you to find a hiding spot, however, I couldn't really find anything, so I ended up getting jump scared. Thankfully, like the first 4 nights, we get 3 lives, so this means that we don't lose. We now had to find the last item, which was the ladder. The ladder says that it's near the Pirate Cove, however, at the Pirate Cove, the ladder was nowhere to be seen. So it seemed that there were multiple spawn locations for these items. I then made my way toward the park, but in doing so, I again ran into Spring Bonnie. This time, I went straight back to the bathroom, and by closing the door, we actually narrowly escaped the entity for the first time. After this, we went back to the park, and there was the ladder. With that, we went back to the bathroom and placed it near the back of the building. At this point, we now had to wind the music box, and doing this multiple times, a cutscene would ensue. The entity seems to be tricked by the music box, so in a very hardened state, we go to the back of the building and go up the ladder. After grabbing a match and lighting it, we would then throw it into the building. Due to the jerry can, the gas would ignite, and this would meet the creature's end. After this, a cutscene plays showing us how we got lured into this job, presenting William Afton as a very cold and manipulative person. And just like that, the game ends, and it's unclear what happens to us, the security guard, and, well, William Afton. Overall, this game was pretty awesome to play, and there was a few hiccups here and there, but at the end, honestly, the experience was absolutely absolutely fantastic. And with that, those were all the games for today's video. If you have enjoyed this video and would want to see more content like this, well, please consider subscribing. On screen here is a video where I get all the achievements in the new FNAF game into the pit. And until next time, take it easy and goodbye.